Again, joining us now is Andy Gipson. He is the Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce for the great state of Mississippi. Commissioner, good to see you, sir.
Great
Thanks
to be
for coming
back.
on.
Thank you for having me, Gerard. Thank you for braving us this great weather out here at the Neshoba County Fair.
Yes, sir. And let's first talk about this uniquely Mississippi.
It is. This is an original agricultural event, a premier agricultural event in the state of Mississippi. That it started with agriculture. It's still continuing. You can go down to those livestock barns and see our best youth, 4-H and FFA, not only from Neshoba County, but a lot of them from other parts of the state.
Yeah.
And it's built from that and it become the premier political speaking and the carnival and all the races, everything here, it ties back to agriculture, Mississippi's biggest industry and the biggest driver of our economy.
Still represents about 35% or so of our total economic output?
It does. A study was recently done. On top of the $9.72 billion of farm gate value our farmers produced record last year, it's about $27 billion of direct economic output for this state. So whether you're talking about chicken, which is our biggest product, our cotton, corn, soybeans, forestry is a huge component. By the way, we've doubled our agriculture exports as a state and created new markets over the last 5 years, including wood products. We really needed to develop that, and we've done that. So it's growing. It's a growing industry. And it's directly related to all the good things happening here in Neshoba County.
So how would you assess, Commissioner, the health of the agriculture industry in the state of Mississippi?
Well, like all industries, we've got headwinds that we face. Although we've had record production, this inflation has hurt farmers worse than anybody. The cost of fertilizer has doubled. Cost of fuel, as you know, was skyrocketing last year. The input cost to raise the crop is about double what it cost two years ago. Some of that is because of the COVID pandemic scare, the supply chain crisis that we saw. A lot of plants around the country shut down. You couldn't get parts. You couldn't get what you needed. And so prices have skyrocketed. I think a lot of it's attributed to the failed policies that we see coming out of Washington, D.C., pumping all this money, fake money, into the economy.
Yep.
And, propping up all these, failing outfits. I think those are headwinds that we face, but agriculture's strong. In fact, we had record production 3 years in a row despite COVID. We have had production last year, $9.72 billion worth, that nearly touched $10 billion for the first time in history. And we surpassed over $1 billion of that in exports, and that's valuable markets for our farmers. What I'm deeply concerned about is what's happening around the world today that we don't have control over. I'm worried about the weather patterns that we see, the war in Russia, Ukraine. Just yesterday, Russia was bombing the grain bins in Ukraine. That's a third of the world's grain supply. I'm worried about these out-of-control, radical, liberal environmental regulations that are trying to shut down farming, not only in this country, coming out of Washington, D.C., but around the world. I went to Europe because they passed environmental regulations to shut down their farmers, and now they're trying to figure out where to get their food. All these things beyond our control are what I'm concerned about, and I think we need to act to think about our food supply, food security for the long term.
I'm sure you've seen the cattle farmers across the Midwest are really struggling this summer with a drought.
They are, and that drought is partly because of the solar patterns. They tell. I went to the Farm Bureau meeting the other day, and they had an expert weather person who said that solar flares are on a trajectory. They have an 11-year cycle. They're supposed to peak about 2025, and we're looking at some really serious weather conditions. So we need to know about that, and we need to prepare for it. Food supply, and we got to eat before we do anything else. Yeah. And I think our farmers are doing everything they can. We have seen a lot of good improvements. We got a lot of local food, genuine Mississippi food, through our program that we're trying to raise awareness of, but there's infrastructure that we need to put in place that Mississippi used to have, but it's just fallen away over the years, like central market, value-added processing, canning, cold storage. The average cold storage in America is 57 years old, and it's less efficient than modern cold storage. We need that at our ports and harbors, our transportation hubs, so we have ready access to food supply, regardless of these factors that we can't control.
Yeah. And I'm watching the price of oil is ticking up again, and there's a fear that that's going to reignite inflation, as you know, because oil, fuel, energy is embedded in every product and service we consume, honestly, and this is a problem. And unfortunately, Washington, I almost feel like they celebrate that when it goes up. They think we're going to consume less.
Make some more batteries. Well, you can't raise the food to feed the world on a battery power. You just can't do it. Anybody who knows anything about farming knows that.
Yeah.
It's too big. And the world food supply is a 1 year at a time proposition.
Yeah.
Every farmer knows that, and I think Mississippians know that. So we have an opportunity here, I think, to rebuild our agriculture infrastructure, which is what I talked about in my speech today. And it's a generational opportunity, and it has the potential to double economic powerhouse of agriculture in Mississippi.
Of course, Commissioner, you're seeking re-election. That's why you're here and talking to us today. You've got some candidates certainly on the Democrat side that have been very outspoken. They've been critical of you. Why should the voters re-elect you, sir?
Well, I got a track record of getting things done, and I have proven over the last 5 years that not only do we have the vision to see what needs to be done, but we've gotten it done for our farmers. We have promoted local access to food. We've expanded farmers markets across the state. We have, as I mentioned, tapped new markets for our farmers and expanded existing markets. We've kept agriculture strong despite that pandemic, and when you couldn't find what you needed in the grocery store, you could go to the farmer's market and find it during COVID-19. There are things that we need to do. I've got a vision for the next 4 years in terms of agriculture infrastructure, rebuilding that. This is the most important infrastructure that we can invest in, and I think the legislature has the opportunity to do something generational in terms of strengthening our food supply chain infrastructure. I work closely with the legislature, have had good success. We have consolidated, since I've been commissioner, 3 different agencies: the Fairgrounds, the Central Market, and Department of Agriculture. Those 3 agencies used to be 3 separate agencies. We consolidated them into one, and we're now operating 3 agencies for the price of one, and we're getting more done. That is the definition of conservative leadership. I don't promise that I can provide that. I'm already providing that. And I think, as I mentioned, we see what liberal Democrats are doing in Washington. They're destroying this country. We're not going to allow them to destroy Mississippi, to mess up our beloved state the way they have messed up this country. Ruination coming into America by these liberal policies, environmental, radical. I just think the people of Mississippi are sick and tired of seeing the Democrats destroy America. We're not going to let that happen to agriculture.
I know you have a history of serving in the legislature in Mississippi, and of course that's who makes our laws. Do you have any thing on your legislative agenda in the coming session?
I sure do. In fact, I announced today what I'm calling the Mississippi SAFE Plan, Strategic Agriculture Facilities Expansion Plan. This is the type of infrastructure that I'm talking about when we think about preparing for the storm clouds on the horizon of food scarcity, food insecurity, agriculture, value-added processing. We've been talking with our legislative leaders for a couple of years about this. I find broad support for it. It's the number one question I get as I travel Mississippi from people. Is our food supply secure? Because they don't want to have to depend on, what's happening in the world around us and somewhere on the other side of the world or somebody in the Midwest for our food. They want it local. So I think this is an opportunity to rebuild and strengthen Mississippi's existing agriculture infrastructure. We'll be proposing that. I just announced today by way of press release the components of that plan: regional food hubs for distribution, storage, processing, and also strengthening our farmers markets infrastructure for their cold storage needs, mobile processing, mobile farmers markets, and finally we need to deploy equipment on farm. As far as on-farm processing, we need to make sure it's available to our farmers in this state in a strategic way that it has not been, and also for distribution. Take our ports and harbors. We're strategically positioned as a state. We could be the agriculture and food supply hub for the entire southeastern United States, the Mississippi Gulf Coast. If we built out our cold stores there, modernized it, the Mississippi River, over the Tenn-Tom Waterway, our hub of transportation up in DeSoto County, from North Mississippi, Vicksburg, Meridian, Hattiesburg, the Gulf Coast, the opportunity is to double our agriculture economy and jobs are endless. I'm excited about it, and I look forward to working with our legislature to get this done for the good people of Mississippi.
Appreciate that insight, Commissioner.
Thank
you coming on as well. Have a good fair, and good luck on the election. Thanks for coming on.
Thank
yes,
you.
sir.
Take care.
Commissioner Andy Gipson, he oversees the Department of Agriculture and Commerce, has been on Middays. When we come back, it's Greta Kemp Martin, candidate for Attorney General. Stay with us.